The story of strength in the world of Pokémon often begins with legends of battle, towering creatures, and unforgettable encounters. In the very first region, Kanto, players were introduced to a roster of creatures that would shape the entire future of the franchise. Some were small and unassuming, while others stood as giants with power that seemed unmatched. Over time, trainers came to recognize which among them carried the greatest strength, not just through lore, but through hard numbers, competitive dominance, and cultural impact. In this journey, we will move from the lower end of the strongest all the way to the absolute pinnacle, examining each one with care and detail. Strength is not always measured the same way, but when it comes to the Pokémon of Kanto, a clear hierarchy emerges that reflects their roles both in the games and beyond. Lapras is the first on this list, considered the weakest among the strongest of Kanto, though that description hardly diminishes its value. This water and ice type was introduced as a rare gift Pokémon, obtainable only once, symbolizing how special it was. Lapras carries an enormous base health pool, one of the highest in the original games, making it one of the bulkiest companions a trainer could have. That sheer endurance allowed it to take hits that would knock out many others, and combined with its solid defenses, it became a trusted wall in many battles. While not the most explosive attacker, its access to strong ice moves like Blizzard made it an essential check to dangerous threats such as Dragonite, which otherwise could dominate. In the context of the original competitive Kanto scene, Lapras held a steady niche as a bulky utility Pokémon, never top tier, but always dependable. Beyond numbers, Lapras stood out for its design and lore. It was depicted as a gentle giant, ferrying people across the seas. The anime cemented this image when Ash traveled with a Lapras during his Johto adventures, making it not only a powerhouse, but also a companion, symbolizing friendship and trust. This duality of being both strong and kind set Lapras apart from many others in the roster. Even in battle, its moveset often reflected this dual role, being able to use supportive techniques like Sing or Confuse Ray alongside its icy offense. It was not a Pokémon of overwhelming destruction, but one of resilience, versatility, and quiet strength. One of the most fascinating aspects of Lapras is how it has remained relevant across generations, even as the competitive scene evolved. In later games, it gained access to new moves and abilities that expanded its usefulness, showing that its initial strengths were not a fluke, but part of a well-rounded design. It embodies the idea that true power is not only about raw dominance, but also about balance, flexibility, and endurance. In the hierarchy of Kanto's strongest, Lapras may sit at the bottom, but its presence there speaks volumes. Only the most powerful can make the cut, and Lapras more than earns its place. Snorlax is one of the most iconic powerhouses of Kanto, remembered not only for its immense bulk, but for the way it embodies endurance and patience. From the very first time trainers encountered it, blocking routes by sleeping in the middle of the path, it became clear that this was no ordinary Pokémon. Unlike many encounters that could be skipped or ignored, Snorlax was a mandatory battle. It had to be awakened with the Poké Flute, making the meeting feel special and memorable. Once awakened, trainers quickly realized how difficult it was to bring down. With sky-high health and impressive defenses, Snorlax could soak up attacks that would devastate most other Pokémon, turning every battle against it into a war of attrition. Statistically, Snorlax stood out in Kanto for having one of the very highest health pools in the entire Pokédex. This bulk was paired with a massive attack stat, meaning it was not just hard to knock out, but also capable of striking back with devastating force. In the early competitive metagames, Snorlax was a defining presence. Its sheer staying power made it a staple on many teams, and its ability to learn a wide variety of moves gave it unmatched versatility. From powerful normal-type attacks, like Body Slam, to coverage moves such as Earthquake, it could adapt to nearly any situation. That combination of durability and offense made it one of the most reliable Pokémon in Kanto's strongest roster. One of Snorlax's most memorable qualities is its personality. Despite being a juggernaut in battle, its lore describes it as docile, spending most of its time eating and sleeping. The idea that such a laid-back creature could dominate fights added charm and humor to its design. In the anime, Snorlax often appeared as a gluttonous yet dependable ally, further cementing its reputation as both lovable and terrifying. When called into action, it could overwhelm opponents with raw strength, but outside of battle, it was a gentle giant. This contrast made it one of the most beloved Pokémon in the franchise. Snorlax's move pool also contributed to its reputation. It had access to both offensive and defensive strategies, able to run sets that emphasized tanking hits with rest or to unleash raw damage with Hyper Beam. The flexibility of being able to play different roles depending on a team's needs is rare, and in the restrictive environment of the first generation, Snorlax thrived. It was often compared directly to Chansey as one of the premier defensive Pokémon, but Snorlax carried the additional advantage of being a legitimate offensive threat. Where Chansey specialized in sponging special attacks, Snorlax punished physical hits and turned battles into slugfests that often ended in its favor. Its dominance did not fade after the Kanto era. Across later generations, Snorlax remained a respected force, constantly receiving new tools that allowed it to keep pace with the changing game. The introduction of leftovers, for instance, gave it passive recovery that perfectly complemented its already immense bulk. Moves like Curse turned it into a late-game sweeper, stacking attack and defense until it became nearly impossible to stop. These adaptations only reinforced what trainers had known from the start. Snorlax was built to last. The legacy of Snorlax extends beyond numbers and battles. It has become a symbol of the series itself, appearing in spin-off games, merchandise, and countless cameos. Players who may not remember exact stats or strategies still recall the frustration of trying to wake it up, the satisfaction of catching it, and the awe of using it in their own teams. Its image as the sleeping giant that must be moved has become one of the defining memories of the early games. That cultural impact, combined with undeniable strength, ensures that Snorlax holds a secure place among the greatest of Kanto. When comparing Snorlax to others in this ranking, what sets it apart is not speed or flashiness, but consistency. It may not have the supernatural mystique of a legendary or the magical aura of a psychic powerhouse, but it embodies raw, dependable strength. It takes hits, it dishes them back, and it endures longer than nearly anything else. In the hierarchy of Kanto's strongest, Snorlax rises above Lapras by sheer reliability and dominance in competitive play. It is not the most glamorous fighter, but it is one of the most feared, and for good reason. Few Pokémon in Kanto represent the idea of transformation and raw power as clearly as Gyarados. It begins life as the humble Magikarp, one of the weakest creatures in existence, often ridiculed for its inability to fight. Yet through persistence and training, it evolves into one of the most fearsome monsters in the region, a dragon-like serpent capable of immense destruction. This dramatic change made Gyarados a favorite among trainers, not only because of its strength, but because of the story it tells that even the weakest can become extraordinary with time and effort. From a statistical perspective, Gyarados stood out immediately. With high attack and solid bulk, it was capable of dealing devastating damage while taking hits in return. Its water and flying typing gave it unique strengths and weaknesses, allowing it to counter certain opponents while still needing to avoid electric moves. Despite this limitation, it was one of the strongest offensive threats in the original games, often able to sweep through teams with little resistance once its counters were removed. Its signature intimidation factor carried into the competitive scene, where it became a constant reminder that power and presence mattered as much as raw stats. Gyarados also carried deep lore within the Kanto region. Legends spoke of Magikarp that leapt over waterfalls, transforming into powerful creatures as a reward for their determination. This myth tied directly into the real-world story of the koi fish and the Dragon Gate, making Gyarados one of the first Pokémon to connect the series to ancient folklore. The idea that such a weak and mocked creature could rise to greatness struck a chord with players, making it one of the most enduring examples of Pokémon as symbols of growth and resilience. In battle, Gyarados often relied on powerful physical attacks, such as Hyper Beam, a move that defined many offensive strategies in the first generation. Its access to strong water moves, like Hydro Pump, also allowed it to take advantage of opponents that were unprepared for its versatility. While it lacked the psychic powers that dominated early Kanto competitive play, it carved out its own niche as a dangerous physical powerhouse. Its combination of threatening stats and intimidating lore made it one of the most memorable foes a trainer could face. The anime further elevated Gyarados' reputation. Its towering, fearsome design and destructive temperament made it a symbol of danger. Episodes frequently depicted it as a threat to villages, sailors, and even trainers themselves, reinforcing its role as one of the most terrifying Pokémon in the world. At the same time, its association with Magikarp made it a symbol of patience and perseverance. Ash and other characters encountered it as a challenge to overcome, cementing its place as a cultural icon beyond the games. One of the most famous encounters with Gyarados came in the Johto region with the red Gyarados at the Lake of Rage. This unique shiny Pokémon showed how even within its species, there were variations that stood out as legends. The event itself became a landmark moment in the series, one of the first times players were guaranteed to see a shiny Pokémon in-game. While this occurred outside of Kanto, it added to the overall mythos of Gyarados as a creature larger than life, capable of capturing the imagination of players across generations. In competitive play beyond the first generation, Gyarados remained a staple thanks to the introduction of new abilities and moves. Intimidate allowed it to weaken physical attackers, while access to moves like Dragon Dance turned it into a sweeping threat that could overwhelm entire teams. This ensured that Gyarados was never forgotten as the generations advanced, remaining relevant even as new Pokémon entered the spotlight. Its ability to adapt and remain strong showed that its place among the strongest of Kanto was not simply nostalgia, but a reflection of genuine lasting power. What makes Gyarados unique compared to other strong Pokémon in Kanto is the balance between story and strength. Its power is undeniable, backed by strong stats and competitive presence, but its journey from Magikarp adds emotional weight. Few Pokémon embody both mechanics and narrative so perfectly. When trainers see Gyarados, they are reminded of persistence, transformation, and the reward for effort. In this way, it is not just strong in terms of numbers, but strong in spirit, a creature that resonates with both players and fans on a deeper level. In the hierarchy of Kanto's strongest, Gyarados rises above Snorlax and Lapras by sheer ferocity and cultural presence. Where Lapras is gentle and Snorlax is steady, Gyarados is overwhelming, commanding respect through fear and awe. It is a reminder that power often comes with unpredictability and that even the most ridiculed beginnings can give rise to legends. Among the giants of Kanto, Gyarados earns its place as a true powerhouse, feared on the battlefield and celebrated in lore. Alakazam has long been regarded as one of the sharpest blades in Kanto's arsenal, not through brute force, but through unmatched intelligence and psychic might. Its reputation as one of the fastest and most destructive special attackers in the original games is backed by numbers that spoke for themselves. With blazing speed and a special stat that ranked among the very highest in the first generation, Alakazam was able to outspeed nearly everything while striking with precision. In a metagame dominated by psychic types, it was not just good, it was defining. Many battles hinged on whether a team had an answer to Alakazam, and often those answers were scarce. The dominance of psychic typing in the earliest games came down to a few key factors. At that time, there were very few counters to psychic attacks, and many defensive options simply did not exist. Moves like Psychic itself were devastating, capable of not only dealing massive damage, but also lowering the opponent's stats. Alakazam's speed ensured that it nearly always struck first, and when combined with the raw force of its special stat, opponents often fell before they had a chance to retaliate. This made it one of the most feared competitive Pokémon of the era, defining strategies and forcing players to shape their teams around dealing with it. Beyond numbers, Alakazam carried an aura of mystique. Its Pokédex entries described it as having an IQ of 5,000, capable of remembering everything it experiences and solving any problem. This lore elevated it from a mere battler into something that felt otherworldly, a being whose intelligence rivaled or surpassed that of humans. Its spoons, always shown bent in its design, became symbols of psychic power, reflecting the old myths of psychics, bending metal with their minds. The idea that Alakazam could wield such overwhelming intellect added depth to its already fearsome reputation. The anime helped solidify this image. When Alakazam appeared, it was often portrayed as nearly invincible, outsmarting and overpowering opponents with ease. Its duels, particularly against strong trainers or rival psychic types, reinforced the idea that it was not just another Pokémon, but a true powerhouse. Its presence alone created tension, as trainers and viewers alike knew they were facing something on an entirely different level of strength. Alakazam's influence extended far beyond Kanto. In later generations, while game mechanics adjusted psychic dominance, Alakazam adapted and remained a feared threat. The introduction of abilities like Magic Guard and new moves gave it staying power in competitive play. Even as new Pokémon rose and fell in popularity, Alakazam never disappeared entirely, always finding ways to remind trainers of its legacy as one of the most destructive psychic types. Its Mega Evolution, introduced in later games, only amplified this reputation by further increasing its special attack and speed to nearly unmatched levels, cementing it as a Pokémon that had always been destined for the top. The cultural impact of Alakazam cannot be overlooked. It is frequently remembered alongside other icons of strength from the first generation, often appearing on lists of the most powerful or influential Pokémon in history. Its design, simple yet striking, reflects the archetype of a mystic warrior, blending elegance with intimidation. The bent spoons, the focused eyes, and the calm posture all tell a story of power that is not loud or showy, but deliberate and terrifying in its precision. What sets Alakazam apart from others in the hierarchy of Kanto's strongest is the way it redefined battles. Where Snorlax represented bulk and endurance, and Gyarados represented ferocity and transformation, Alakazam embodied speed, intelligence, and overwhelming special offense. It forced trainers to think differently, to prepare for something they could not simply overpower. It demanded counters, strategy, and respect, and even then, many found themselves swept away by its sheer force. In the rankings of Kanto's most powerful, Alakazam belongs firmly near the top. It may not carry the same lore-heavy weight as the legendaries or the dragon-like giants, but its dominance in both gameplay and cultural memory ensures it remains unforgettable. To face an Alakazam was to face inevitability, a battle often lost before it began, dictated by speed, intellect, and psychic destruction. Among the many Pokémon of Kanto, few inspire as much intrigue and fear as Gengar. This ghost and poison type is not only powerful in terms of numbers and strategy, but also steeped in lore that makes it unforgettable. From the moment players encountered Ghastly in the haunted tower of Lavender Town, it was clear that these ghostly creatures carried a different energy than most. By the time Ghastly evolved into Gengar, players were facing one of the most sinister yet captivating Pokémon in the entire region. With a mischievous grin and a reputation for lurking in shadows, Gengar became a symbol of both trickery and strength. Statistically, Gengar stood out immediately in the first generation. It was one of the fastest Pokémon in Kanto, able to outspeed most opponents with ease. Its special stat, shared by all special offense and defense in the original games, was also impressively high, giving it strong offensive potential. But what truly separated Gengar from others was its move pool. Despite being a ghost type, it had access to a wide range of attacks from many different types, allowing it to surprise opponents who thought they had prepared for it. Moves like Hypnosis, Thunderbolt, and Explosion turned Gengar into a versatile and dangerous threat that could disrupt nearly any team. Gengar's typing also carried special significance in the early games. Ghost moves were scarce and bugged in the first generation, but the very presence of Gengar added psychological weight. Being immune to normal and fighting moves gave it utility, letting it switch into attacks that would damage nearly any other Pokémon. Its poison typing added weaknesses, particularly to psychic types, but it also gave Gengar tools to exploit status effects and chip away at opponents. This mix of speed, power, and utility made it one of the most feared Pokémon in competitive Kanto battles. Beyond the battlefield, Gengar's lore elevated it into legend. Pokédex entries described it as a shadow that lurks behind people, silently waiting for the moment to strike. Its design suggested mischief, but also danger, a being that blurred the line between playful trickster and malevolent spirit. These descriptions tapped into real-world ghost folklore, making Gengar feel more sinister and mysterious than most other Pokémon of the time. The idea that it could hide in shadows, imitating people, or draining their warmth, gave it an aura of horror that no other creature in Kanto carried. The anime reinforced this image with memorable appearances. In episodes like those featuring the ghost trio of Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar, the creatures were portrayed as pranksters with dark humor, yet their power was never in doubt. Their mix of comedy and danger mirrored the duality present in Gengar's game lore, a Pokemon that could be both entertaining and terrifying. These appearances made Gengar a fan favorite, cementing its reputation as one of the most iconic ghost types in the franchise. As the series expanded beyond Kanto, Gengar continued to thrive. The introduction of abilities and new moves only strengthened its role as a versatile threat. With Levitate in later generations, it gained immunity to ground moves, one of its former weaknesses, making it even harder to counter. Competitive formats often placed Gengar in high tiers, recognizing its ability to break teams with speed, power, and unpredictability. When Mega Evolution was introduced, Gengar reached new heights of dominance. Mega Gengar's Shadow Tag ability allowed it to trap opponents, a strategy so overwhelming that it was banned in many official competitive formats. This only reinforced what trainers already knew: Gengar was not just strong, it was dangerously oppressive when given the right tools. Culturally, Gengar became one of the faces of the franchise. Its mischievous grin and glowing eyes are instantly recognizable, appearing in merchandise, spin-offs, and even promotional events. It has been featured on trading cards, plush toys, and posters as a representation of the spooky side of Pokémon. Its status as a ghost type from the very first generation gave it a kind of pioneer role, forever linking it to the origins of the franchise's darker elements. What makes Gengar unique among Kanto's strongest is the way it blends power with personality. Where Snorlax embodies bulk and Alakazam embodies intellect, Gengar embodies cunning and unpredictability. It thrives on misdirection, using its wide move pool and status tricks to destabilize opponents. At the same time, its lore and design remind players that Pokémon can be more than just creatures for battle. They can be symbols of folklore, fear, and imagination. In the hierarchy of Kanto's strongest, Gengar earns its place for both gameplay and legacy. It is a reminder that true strength is not always straightforward. Sometimes it comes from shadows, tricks, and the ability to stay one step ahead. Whether lurking in the corners of a haunted tower, laughing mischievously in the anime, or breaking through defenses in competitive play, Gengar stands as one of the great icons of Kanto's power. The legendary bird trio of Kanto is among the most iconic groups in the entire Pokémon series. Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres each represent a different element, tied together not only by their designs, but by their shared role as guardians of nature's forces. For many players, encountering one of these birds was the first time they felt the weight of facing something truly legendary. They were not ordinary wild encounters, but events that carried a sense of awe, danger, and importance. Each bird offered its own challenges, rewards, and stories, ensuring that all three earned their place among the strongest Pokémon of Kanto. Articuno, the ice and flying type, is remembered for its beauty and grace as much as its strength. Its design as a majestic ice-covered bird made it one of the most visually striking Pokémon of the first generation. In terms of battle, Articuno's strength came from its bulk and access to powerful ice-type attacks. In a region where Dragonite loomed as a final boss of sorts, Articuno's ability to counter it with devastating ice moves made it valuable. Although it was somewhat limited in the competitive metagame due to weaknesses, its high special stat gave it strong offensive presence. More importantly, Articuno carried symbolic strength. It represented the chill of winter, the unforgiving force of ice, and the serenity of a creature untouchable by the ordinary. Even if not the most dominant of the three in numbers, it stood as a symbol of elegance paired with power. Zapdos, the electric and flying type, was by far the most influential of the trio in competitive play. Its combination of typing, speed, and special attack made it a dominant threat in the Kanto scene. Few Pokemon could withstand its Thunderbolt, and its immunity to ground moves, thanks to its flying type, gave it an advantage over one of electricity's most common counters. This combination made Zapdos one of the most reliable sweepers of the early generations, often finding a home on top-tier teams. Beyond the mechanics, its design conveyed raw energy and aggression, with jagged feathers that resembled bolts of lightning. Zapdos embodied chaos, speed, and relentless offense, earning a reputation as not only one of the strongest birds, but one of the most powerful Pokemon in all of Kanto. Moltres, the fire and flying type, carried a different kind of strength. With its flaming wings and regal posture, it embodied destruction and rebirth. In battle, Moltres had access to strong fire attacks such as Flamethrower and Fire Blast, which gave it tools to burn through opponents that struggled against fire. While competitively it did not dominate in the same way as Zapdos, it was still respected as a hard hitter with a dangerous presence. In lore, Moltres carried great significance. In the Indigo League arc of the anime, it was treated as a symbol of victory and challenge. Within the games, its location in Victory Road reinforced its role as a final trial before entering the Elite Four, making it not only strong in stats, but symbolically tied to the last steps of the journey. Together, the legendary bird trio added layers of depth to the Kanto region. Each represented one of nature's elements, and their existence hinted at the idea that Pokemon were not only creatures, but embodiments of the natural world itself. They were not artificially created or products of chance. They were legendary beings tied to forces beyond human control. This mythology resonated with players, as catching any of them felt like taming a fragment of nature's fury. The anime and movies helped cement their legacy. Episodes featuring the birds often depicted them as forces of balance, with their conflicts or cooperation tied to the fate of the world. The second Pokemon movie, in particular, portrayed the trio as guardians whose disharmony could bring chaos, only to be resolved by the arrival of another legendary. These stories reinforced the idea that the birds were not simply strong in numbers, but powerful in lore, shaping the world around them. In terms of hierarchy among themselves, Zapdos consistently stood out as the most impactful competitively, while Articuno and Moltres carried their weight more through symbolism and specific roles. Yet when considered together, they represent a complete package of strength. Their presence in Kanto gave the region its first taste of what it meant to face legendary Pokemon creatures that stood apart, unmatched by most others. The legendary birds are remembered not just for their battle prowess, but for the sense of wonder they brought to the journey. For trainers exploring Kanto, stumbling upon one of these legendary creatures felt like uncovering a secret too great for ordinary trainers to handle. To this day, they remain symbols of majesty and power, part of the foundation upon which the entire idea of legendaries was built. Dragonite holds a unique place in Kanto's lineup of strongest Pokemon, not only because of its power, but because of the rarity and prestige tied to it. As the only fully evolved dragon type available in the first generation, Dragonite represented an entirely new level of strength, mystery, and reward for trainers dedicated enough to raise one. Obtaining it was no easy feat, beginning with the humble Dratini, evolving into Dragonair, and finally transforming into Dragonite after a long investment of training and patience. This progression mirrored the theme of ultimate growth, where the journey itself prepared players for the immense reward at the end. Statistically, Dragonite was one of the most well-rounded Pokémon in Kanto. Its base stats totaled to some of the very highest in the region, with incredible bulk, strong attack, and balanced defenses. While it was not the fastest, its resilience allowed it to endure hits while striking back with heavy damage. Its typing of dragon and flying also carried unique weight. Dragon-type moves were nearly non-existent in the first generation, aside from Dragon Rage, which dealt fixed damage, but the typing itself symbolized unmatched rarity and prestige. The fact that only Dragonite embodied it gave it an aura of exclusivity that no other Pokémon of the time could match. Lore surrounding Dragonite further cemented its strength. Pokédex entries described it as a guardian of the seas, capable of flying faster than jets and traveling the world in a single day. Unlike the destructive energy of Gyarados or the haunting aura of Gengar, Dragonite carried an image of nobility and kindness. It was often portrayed as a protector rather than a destroyer, balancing its raw power with wisdom. This combination of overwhelming might and benevolent lore made it one of the most fascinating and beloved Pokémon in the region. In battle, Dragonite's versatility was one of its strongest assets. It could learn a wide range of moves, from Thunderbolt to Ice Beam, Fire Blast, and Hyper Beam. This move pool allowed it to counter many of the threats that other powerful Pokémon faced, making it difficult to prepare for. While psychic types dominated the first generation, Dragonite's sheer flexibility gave it a place on teams that valued creativity and adaptability. Its access to strong normal type moves, paired with coverage options, made it unpredictable, forcing opponents to tread carefully. The anime highlighted Dragonite's legendary reputation by portraying it as an almost mythical figure. In one of the most memorable episodes, a giant Dragonite appeared at a lighthouse, depicted as a mysterious guardian of the sea. Its sheer size and aura created a sense of awe, painting it as something greater than an ordinary Pokémon. Later, when trainers such as Lance used Dragonite in official battles, its reputation as a symbol of authority and power was solidified. It became the poster child for dragon types, the standard by which all future dragons would be measured. Dragonite's influence only grew in later generations. With the introduction of better dragon-type moves, such as Outrage and Dragon Claw, its offensive potential skyrocketed. The addition of abilities like Inner Focus and Multiscale further enhanced its resilience, ensuring it remained relevant even as new dragon Pokémon entered the stage. While later dragons, such as Salamence and Dragonite's own pseudo-legendary successors, would compete for dominance, Dragonite never lost its aura as the original powerhouse, the one that started it all. What sets Dragonite apart from others on this list is the way it combined strength with narrative. It was not just strong because of stats, but because of the effort required to obtain it, and the way its lore painted it as a rare and noble figure. Trainers who finally evolved their Dragonair into Dragonite felt a sense of accomplishment that few other Pokémon could match. The journey of raising one mirrored the theme of growth that defined the Pokémon series as a whole. In the hierarchy of Kanto's strongest, Dragonite represents the pinnacle of natural growth. Where Snorlax embodied raw endurance, Alakazam represented intellect, and Gyarados symbolized transformation. Dragonite combined all these themes into a single package. It was strong, versatile, and wise, with lore that elevated it beyond ordinary creatures. For many fans, it was the ultimate goal, the reward at the end of countless battles and hours of dedication. Its role as Kanto's only dragon gave it a crown that no one else could claim, ensuring its place near the very top of the strongest. Mew is one of the most fascinating Pokemon to ever come out of Kanto, not only because of its strength, but because of the mystery that surrounded it from the very beginning. In the original games, players had no straightforward way to catch it, and its presence was hidden deep within the game's data. For years, it existed more as a rumor than a reality, whispered about on playgrounds and in gaming magazines. Stories spread about how Mew could be obtained from moving trucks near the SS, and to secret codes entered at just the right time. This sense of myth turned Mew into a legend before most players ever had the chance to see it themselves. When it was finally revealed, the truth was even more remarkable. Mew was not just real, but one of the most versatile and powerful Pokemon in the entire franchise. What set Mew apart from almost everything else in Kanto was its balance and adaptability. With perfectly even base stats across the board, it had no glaring weaknesses. It was fast enough to outspeed threats, durable enough to survive attacks, and strong enough to fight back effectively. But what truly pushed it into legendary territory was its move pool. Mew was programmed to be able to learn almost every move in the game. This gave it a level of versatility unmatched by any other Pokemon at the time. It could be molded into whatever role a trainer needed: a sweeper, a tank, a supporter, or a disruptive trickster. This flexibility alone made it one of the strongest Pokemon in existence, even before considering its lore. In battle, Mew's ability to adapt made it an unpredictable opponent. Trainers who faced it could never be certain what moves it would use, making planning against it nearly impossible. In competitive play, this unpredictability gave Mew a unique edge. Where other Pokemon were defined by fixed roles, Mew could become almost anything, always shifting and adjusting to meet the needs of the moment. It was not simply strong because of raw power, but because of its ability to always stay a step ahead. Lore added another layer of depth to Mew's reputation. It was said to contain the DNA of all Pokemon, making it the ancestor of nearly every species in existence. This tied directly into its ability to learn any move, reflecting its genetic connection to all types and traits. The idea that one small, unassuming Pokemon could be the foundation of the entire Pokemon world gave Mew a significance far beyond numbers and battles. It was a being of origin, a bridge between science, mythology, and gameplay. For players exploring the mysteries of Kanto, Mew became a symbol of the unknown, proof that the world was deeper and stranger than it first appeared. The anime helped expand this reputation with one of the most memorable early movies, where Mew faced off against its genetically engineered counterpart, Mewtwo. In the film, Mew was portrayed not as a creature of raw aggression, but as one of balance, harmony, and compassion. Its playful nature contrasted sharply with the destructive force of Mewtwo, showing that true strength could come from kindness as much as power. This portrayal reinforced its dual identity as both a mythical legend and a relatable, even lovable companion. Culturally, Mew became one of the most talked about Pokemon in history. Its status as a hidden secret made it a legend among fans, sparking discussions, playground myths, and endless speculation. Even today, many players remember the excitement of hearing rumors about Mew long before they ever saw it for themselves. This sense of discovery became part of its identity, blending mystery with genuine power in a way that few other Pokemon have achieved. In later generations, Mew remained a constant presence, often included in special events, and always tied to the sense of mystery that made it famous. Its balanced stats and universal move pool ensured that it remained relevant, even as new mechanics and creatures entered the game. It was not always the most dominant in competitive play, but it never disappeared, always retaining a place as one of the most versatile and respected Pokémon available. Its legacy as the genetic ancestor of all Pokémon kept it deeply relevant in lore, even as the franchise expanded beyond Kanto. In the hierarchy of Kanto's strongest, Mew sits just below the pinnacle. It may not have the overwhelming raw numbers of Mewtwo, but its balance, adaptability, and lore make it unforgettable. Where other strong Pokémon were defined by specific traits, speed, defense, or destructive power, Mew was defined by its ability to be everything at once. It represented potential, versatility, and mystery, a creature that could never truly be pinned down. In this way, it stands as one of the most powerful Pokémon of Kanto, not simply because of stats, but because of the way it captured the imagination of players worldwide. Mewtwo is not only the strongest Pokémon of Kanto, but one of the most powerful figures in the entire history of the franchise. From the moment it was introduced, Mewtwo carried an aura of unmatched might, backed up by the numbers, lore, and cultural impact that surrounded it. In terms of raw statistics, no other Pokémon in the first generation came close. With one of the highest base special stats ever seen and tremendous speed, it dominated battles with overwhelming efficiency. It was fast enough to move first in nearly every matchup and strong enough to knock out opponents with a single psychic attack. When combined with the fact that psychic typing was already the most dominant in the first generation, Mewtwo became almost untouchable, a force that reshaped how players thought about power in the Pokémon world. The lore behind Mewtwo only amplified its reputation. Unlike other legendary or mythical Pokémon, Mewtwo was not a creature of nature or myth, but a product of human experimentation. It was created through genetic manipulation of Mew's DNA, engineered to be stronger than anything else. This origin story gave it a darker, more menacing identity, setting it apart from other legendaries that were tied to balance or guardianship. Mewtwo was not meant to represent harmony or nature. It was designed for destruction, a living weapon that escaped its creator's control. This narrative made it both fascinating and terrifying, embodying the consequences of human ambition pushed too far. In battle, Mewtwo's presence was overwhelming. Its access to moves like Psychic, Blizzard, and Thunderbolt allowed it to cover nearly every possible weakness. It could recover its own health, boosting its endurance, and strike back with devastating force. No single Pokémon in Kanto could reliably counter it without careful preparation. Even the other strongest contenders on this list, Dragonite, Alakazam, and Gengar, struggled to stand up to it consistently. In competitive play, Mewtwo was often considered so overpowered that it was placed in its own tier, separated from the rest of the cast entirely. This distinction highlighted just how much stronger it was than even the other top Pokémon in the region. The anime and films reinforced this identity. In the very first Pokémon movie, Mewtwo was depicted as a being struggling with its own existence, torn between vengeance against humanity and the search for purpose. Its immense power was showcased in battles where it defeated teams of Pokémon effortlessly, solidifying its reputation as unstoppable. At the same time, its character development gave it depth, showing that strength without meaning could become a burden. This dual portrayal, both as the ultimate fighter and as a tragic figure, elevated Mewtwo beyond mere statistics into something more iconic. Culturally, Mewtwo became one of the most recognized Pokémon in the world. Its role as the secret final boss of the original games, hidden deep in Cerulean Cave, made encountering it a rite of passage. Trainers who reached that point felt they were facing the ultimate challenge, one that tested everything they had learned throughout their journey. Capturing Mewtwo was not just about adding another entry to the Pokédex, it was about proving mastery over the game itself. Its design, with sharp features, a long tail, and an intimidating posture, became synonymous with the concept of strength in Pokémon. Later generations continued to honor Mewtwo's legacy. It was brought back in special events, remakes, and spin-off titles, always portrayed as one of the most formidable Pokémon available. The introduction of Mega Evolutions gave Mewtwo two separate forms, each amplifying different aspects of its already staggering power. Mega Mewtwo X emphasized physical strength, while Mega Mewtwo Y heightened its already devastating special attack. These forms only reinforced the idea that Mewtwo was not just strong in the past, but remained one of the most dangerous Pokémon in any era. What sets Mewtwo apart in the hierarchy of Kanto's strongest is that its power is undeniable in every sense. While others on this list were strong because of balance, adaptability, or cultural presence, Mewtwo combined all of these traits with raw, unmatched force. It had the stats, the lore, the competitive dominance, and the cultural significance to stand above all others. In many ways, it was the ultimate expression of what Pokémon could be: a creature of imagination and science that transcended the boundaries of its world to become a symbol of strength in gaming itself. In the ranking of Kanto's strongest, there is no question that Mewtwo stands at the very top. It was the final test for players, the ultimate weapon in lore, and the most dominant figure in both competitive and cultural contexts. To face Mewtwo was to face inevitability, a battle against the very concept of power itself. Even decades after its introduction, it remains one of the most iconic Pokémon of all time, a reminder of Kanto's legacy and the enduring appeal of strength taken to its extreme. Before we close, it's worth recognizing a couple of notable mentions, powerful Pokémon from Kanto that may not sit at the very top of the hierarchy, but still left a lasting mark through their strength, lore, and legacy. Machamp is a Pokémon that often comes up in discussions of strength, and while it may not break into the absolute top tier of Kanto's strongest, it deserves recognition as one of the most physically imposing creatures introduced in the first generation. From its 4 muscular arms to its reputation as the superpower Pokémon, Machamp has long been associated with sheer, raw strength. Its design alone conveys dominance, with bulging muscles, a confident stance, and the kind of presence that tells trainers immediately that it is not to be underestimated. While Pokémon like Alakazam relied on psychic energy, or Gengar thrived on cunning tricks, Machamp represented brute force, the power of the body made manifest. In terms of statistics, Machamp carried a sky-high attack stat, one of the highest in all of Kanto. This gave it the ability to crush opponents with devastating physical moves, most famously, its signature attack, Submission. Though Submission carried recoil damage, it perfectly embodied Machamp's philosophy: overwhelming offense, even at personal cost. Later generations would expand its move pool, giving it access to moves like Cross Chop and Dynamic Punch, but even in the earliest games, its reputation as a heavy hitter was undeniable. Machamp was not fast, and its defenses were not perfect, but when it struck with terrifying force. What makes Machamp particularly fascinating is its lore. Pokédex entries describe it as capable of hurling 100 punches in mere seconds and moving mountains with its power. These descriptions gave it a mythic quality, transforming it from a strong fighter into something superhuman. The idea that a Pokémon could rival natural disasters in raw strength set Machamp apart, reminding players that not all power was mystical or legendary. Sometimes it was physical, primal, and grounded in muscle. This lore connected it to broader cultural archetypes, resembling mythological strongmen and martial artists who relied on discipline and physical training to achieve greatness. Machamp's evolutionary line also tells an interesting story about growth. It begins with Machoke, a small but determined fighter, then evolves into Machoke, a bulky wrestler that wears a championship belt, and finally reaches its peak as Machamp, the ultimate warrior. This progression mirrors the journey of many martial artists or athletes, training from childhood to adulthood, always seeking improvement and discipline until they reach their maximum potential. Unlike Dragonite's mystical transformation or Gyarados' leap from weakness to strength, Machamp's evolution is grounded in the idea of hard work and dedication. Its strength feels earned, not gifted. In the competitive scene, Machamp had a more limited role in the earliest days due to the dominance of psychic types like Alakazam and Mewtwo, which resisted its fighting attacks and struck it down with ease. Yet even then, Machamp found ways to carve a niche. Its ability to punish normal-type walls like Snorlax and Chansey gave it utility, and in environments where psychic dominance was less overwhelming, Machamp's physical power made it a legitimate threat. Later generations expanded its influence, with abilities like Guts allowing it to use status conditions to its advantage and moves that improved its reliability. This long-term growth reflected its lore of constant training and refinement. The anime and other media gave Machamp moments to shine as well. It often appeared as the trusted powerhouse of gym leaders, construction workers, and other characters who valued raw strength. Its depiction as both a laborer and a fighter reflected its dual nature, not only a warrior in the arena, but also a Pokémon capable of supporting human society with feats of strength. The idea that Machamp could lift heavy loads and move obstacles made it practical as well as dangerous, a reminder that strength can be both destructive and constructive. Culturally, Machamp became one of the most recognized fighting types in the franchise. Its image of 4 powerful arms became instantly iconic, setting a standard for what players expected from Pokémon in the fighting category. Even as new generations introduced other martial arts-inspired designs, Machamp remained the original, the archetype of strength in its purest form. Its presence in spin-offs, merchandise, and competitive play kept it relevant, and its reputation as the embodiment of physical power has never faded. What sets Machamp apart in the discussion of Kanto's strongest is the way it symbolizes a different kind of strength than others on the list. While legendaries like Mewtwo represented overwhelming numbers and lore-heavy origins, Machamp represented something more grounded, the idea of strength achieved through training and dedication. Its lore placed it in the realm of giants and superhumans, capable of feats that bordered on the impossible, yet its design always tied it back to the familiar concept of a disciplined fighter. In this way, Machamp is not only strong in battle, but also meaningful in symbolism. Although Machamp does not surpass legends like Dragonite or Mewtwo in raw dominance, it earns its place as a notable mention for its balance of lore, design, and practical strength. It is a reminder that not all power comes from mysticism, genetics, or legend. Sometimes, true strength comes from effort, endurance, and relentless training. In the grand hierarchy of Kanto, Machamp may sit just outside the very top, but its fists, its lore, and its cultural legacy ensure that it will always be remembered as one of the most formidable fighters of the region. Rhydon deserves recognition as one of the foundational Pokémon of Kanto, both for its in-game presence and for its role in the real-world history of the franchise. Known as the Drill Pokémon, Rhydon stood out for its combination of brute strength, rocky armor, and distinctive horn. But beyond its battle performance, Rhydon carries a unique legacy. It was the very first Pokémon ever designed by Ken Sugimori and the development team. This makes it not just another entry in the Pokédex, but the literal blueprint from which the rest of the franchise would eventually grow. In that sense, its significance goes far beyond the battlefield, anchoring it as a cornerstone of Pokémon's creation. In terms of gameplay, Rhydon was a powerhouse of raw physical strength. With one of the very highest attack stats in Kanto, it was capable of crushing opponents with moves like Earthquake and Rock Slide. Its bulky frame and strong defense also allowed it to absorb physical hits better than many others, giving it the staying power to serve as a frontline tank. The trade-off, however, was that its special defense and speed were quite low, leaving it vulnerable to water and grass attacks. This balance gave Rhydon an identity as a glass cannon of sorts, devastating when it hit, but requiring careful play to avoid being outpaced or targeted by its weaknesses. Despite those drawbacks, Rhydon found a place in competitive play during the early days. It was one of the few Pokémon that could reliably check the powerful electric types of Kanto, such as Zapdos or Jolteon, thanks to its immunity to electric attacks. This niche made it valuable in certain team compositions, where its ability to absorb lightning strikes and retaliate with massive ground-type moves provided crucial balance. Its presence in competitive circles proved that while it was not flawless, it had a clear and important role. Trainers who underestimated it often found themselves punished by its devastating power. The lore surrounding Rhydon also added to its reputation. Pokédex entries described it as capable of punching through solid rocks, toppling buildings, and enduring lava flows. These feats painted it as a creature of unstoppable force, practically a living natural disaster. Its horn, said to be able to drill through boulders with ease, made it one of the most destructive Pokémon in existence from a thematic perspective. Rhydon embodied the archetype of the Juggernaut, an immovable and unstoppable beast that could overwhelm obstacles through sheer might. In the anime and other media, Rhydon often appeared as the chosen partner of tough trainers or villains, reinforcing its image as a dangerous and powerful creature. Gym leaders and powerful opponents sometimes used Rhydon to showcase their strength, making it a visual shorthand for intimidation. Its rocky design and towering presence gave it an aura of menace that made battles against it memorable. Even outside of battles, Rhydon's sheer size and drilling abilities tied it to themes of construction and destruction, giving it a versatile identity in the broader Pokémon universe. Culturally, Rhydon's role as the first Pokémon ever designed gives it a special place in history. When developers began experimenting with how Pokémon should look and function, Rhydon served as the test subject. Its sprite was used as a placeholder for many other Pokémon during development, meaning that even unseen, it shaped the very mechanics of the series. This hidden legacy makes Rhydon more than just another strong fighter. It makes it a silent architect of the entire franchise. Without Rhydon, the world of Pokémon might have looked very different Over time, Rhydon gained further recognition through its evolution into Rhyperior in later generations, expanding its role and updating its stats. Yet, even without that evolution, its legacy as one of the original powerhouses of Kanto remains intact. Its balance of overwhelming physical strength, thematic lore, and historical importance ensures that it will always stand apart from many of its peers. What makes Rhydon notable in the discussion of Kanto's strongest is not that it completely dominated battles, but that it left a permanent imprint on both gameplay and the series itself. Few Pokémon can claim to be both a competitive threat and a foundational piece of development history. Rhydon did both, embodying strength in every sense of the word. It was powerful in combat, intimidating in lore, and essential in creation. While it does not eclipse legends like Dragonite or Mewtwo in raw dominance, Rhydon earns its honorable mention as one of the most important and memorable Pokémon of the region. It reminds us that strength is not only measured in numbers or victories, but also in legacy. As the first design to set the tone for hundreds that followed, Rhydon will always carry the weight of being the starting point for the entire franchise. That alone secures its place as a noteworthy powerhouse in the history of Kanto. The strongest Pokémon of Kanto are more than just numbers and stats. They are legends that shape the very beginning of the series. From gentle giants to destructive forces, each one left its mark on the games, the anime, and the memories of players around the world. As you rest, let these stories of strength remind you of the timeless wonder that began with the first region.